So all of that needs to be taken in consideration with devices inside and outside the workplace. And a well thought out strategy regarding device security at all levels needs to be considered.
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
So tell us what, and I guess make you uncomfortable growing a business, especially your pro is very difficult. I will explain after because of that. So what has been the transition for you going in a zone that you're not comfortable? Because it's totally opposite. If you want to be a developer, it's because you like to be alone with your computer thinking and you don't want anybody to bother you. Now sales, marketing, pro market fit is completely different. You need to go out there, talk with strangers, but otherwise nothing moves. So tell us your challenges there.
I think most challenges that founders face is that they try to do things all on their own. Even Andrew Carnegie, US Steel, understood early on that he was not necessarily the smartest person in the room, and that what he did was he surrounded himself with people that were smarter than him. And so as a founder, in some cases, we may need to, get over our own egos. In other cases, we need to understand our own limitations. And the most successful organizations that I am aware of, and consider Google and Microsoft and Apple, even though there was one person, let's say, that might have been the face of the organization, there might have been somebody that was like right over their shoulder that was their match made in heaven. Whether it was one person was the big visionary and the other person was the coder or the engineer. One person was really great at sales and marketing, whereas the other person was really great at development. And between the two of them, let's say, they were able to put together something that made a lot of sense to the marketplace. And they were able to work together in this marriage, so to speak, that ultimately produced a product or a service that in the case of course, Microsoft and Apple and Google, millions and millions of people, billions of people enjoy today. So I think it's finding your counterpart as a form of yin and yang, that somebody who is opposite but equal, somebody who does something different than you do, but things better than you do. And once you find that counterpart, and you find that match, that really is what I've seen from my own experience as the most successful unicorns. Mark Zuckerberg might be, the main name in that organization, but he surrounded himself with a lot of people that were just behind the scenes. I think Sheryl Sandberg and others that were responsible for the success of that organization.
So, Robert, let's talk about your business, because you know that the Sunday I was in a house with friends and I'm checking my websites and all my sites are down. And we have like 57 websites. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we get hacked again. I'm saying we get hacked again because it already happened to me twice. And always happened in the worst moment. Like the previous time that this happened to me, I was in Singapore about to come to the stage. And of course, we need all the websites, we need everything. And I get hacked and everything down. On the same size, to evaluate as an entrepreneur, people say, cybersecurity, what is my return in investment? You don't see a return. You only see a return on investment when everything totally gets wiped out. And I think that the biggest fear that all these huge companies, Amazon, Facebook, you name it, is the only thing that keeps them awake at night is cybersecurity. These are companies that have revenue, they are solid, they are growing, but it doesn't matter if you're Uber, if you're Airbnb, if you're Facebook, if you're Amazon. If you get hacked and the whole thing goes down and you don't know what happened, which actually happened to me. Also, luckily, we find out there was something in the payment on the service failed. And because we're not paying attention, we got a warning and they said, look, you either pay this now or we wipe out everything. I'm like, what?
Ransomware.
What happened? Yeah, what happened here? What happened? I think it was that the credit card they expired, something like this. I said to my IT director, look, pay and after find out what happened. But let's we cannot have all those sides. So tell us what are the challenges to explain the value of the cybersecurity? Because it happened to me already three times that you only concern about cybersecurity when something huge happened, which is actually twice. I got hacked so badly that I had to build all the websites again from scratch.
You know, cybersecurity is a fundamental part of any business operation that unfortunately is overlooked mostly by small to medium businesses. Larger corporations that are under that essentially are, at the federal and state level, even small businesses all need to be compliant to some degree. You know, there are numerous laws in place, again, both federally, state, and even local, that require, certain levels of due diligence, compliance, that you have certain systems in place to reduce risk, to protect sensitive and personal information. If and when those measures aren't properly taken, and you are out of compliance, and ultimately you are, hacked, there is a data loss. The expenses as a result of, lawyers and fines can be astronomical. Several thousand records that are compromised could potentially cost, 6 and 7 figures. There is enormous penalties and liability in not being effective in basic cyber hygiene. And when you think of it on a personal level, because most security, from my perspective, all security is personal. And what that means is it all begins with you, the individual. It all begins with the chief information security officer. He or she that's responsible for the security of the organization is much more effective if that CISO has, say, a home security system, if that same person has identity theft protection, if that same person is using a password manager and using a different passcode across multiple accounts and making sure that they're using two-factor authentication across all their critical accounts, right? So when all security is personal, even at the C-suite level, those people in charge,
100%,
they do their job a lot more effectively. And as a small to medium business person, if you yourself have your security in order, your personal security in order, then you understand the value of being proactive in implementing cybersecurity. So what I provide is cybersecurity awareness training, which essentially is making, say, things like phishing simulation training stick. Because while phishing simulation training solves generally the problem of reacting and responding to phishing emails, it doesn't necessarily, phishing simulation training doesn't necessarily solve the all security is personal issue. In other words, we generally don't lock our doors. We generally don't have a home security system. And I know this because I ask my audiences the same questions. How many of you have a password manager? Less than 10%. How many of you are using a different passcode across all your critical accounts? If I get 10% of the audience to raise their hand, that's a lot. How many of you are using two-factor authentication across all your critical accounts? If I get 15% of the audience to raise their hand, that's a lot. Which means that, 85 to 95% of all consumers, including employees, are using the same passcodes across multiple accounts and not using two-factor authentication. And often, when asking those same questions of CISOs, CIOs, and so forth.
Robert, hold on 1 second. Can you expand in some terminology so in order to make it familiar for our audience? For example, phishing emails, what that means, and all these CSOs that you describe. If you can break it down. I know that that's a term that for you they are very familiar, but
I am so sorry.
Even for me, that a high-tech guy. Yeah.
My apologies. 100% my apologies. So phishing, we all get these phishing emails. Phishing simulation training is when your company's CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, or CTO, Chief Technology Officer, or CIO, Chief Information Officer, will work with a company that provides phishing emails. In other words, they purposefully will send out emails to employees that look like it's coming from HR, or look like it's coming from your bank, or looks like it's coming from the CEO. And these emails that look legit are in fact scammy emails intended on ending up in your inbox with the intent to scam the employee into clicking links, into downloading sensitive links that ultimately could infect the network, and to respond to a password reset request.
Wow.
Emails that are designed to trick the employee to engage in the phishing simulation. The purpose and point of all of this is to see who in the organization is more or less vulnerable to this type of a ruse, to this type of a fraud. Okay. And if in fact that employee clicks that link, downloads that file, replies with that sensitive information, then the follow-up to that through the phishing simulation training would be, hey, employee, you just clicked a link. You just responded with sensitive information. This was a test. And the idea is to educate that employee on the spot to say, in the future, this is what you need to look out for. And that type
definitely
of
need to go to training.
Yeah, exactly.
If they work for my organization, the next step would be you need to go for the training. You need to go for a 1 hour workshop.
Yeah. And so you bring up an important point that the bring your own devices, the BYOD, into the workplace, or remotely working at home from your own devices, increases what we call the attack surface. The attack surface being there are that many more devices within the organization that in some cases may be out of the Chief Information Security Officer's control. So there are technologies available to that CISO that allow for mobile device management. So it allows that CISO to control those BYODs, the bring your own devices, so that those devices can't necessarily access, say, YouTube, or they can't access gaming sites, or they can't access, say, Dropbox, so that their devices themselves have mobile device management that allows the company more control over the attack surface of that external device. And that's an important consideration that also comes with a cost, right? So that has to be well thought out within the organization. And when you think about it, right, let's just say, Fidelity is the company that you invest your money with, right? You want Fidelity's employees to use devices that are secure, that their kids aren't using, because you want your money properly protected, right? And so no matter the size of your organization, no matter the type of work that you do from that device, the vulnerabilities that can occur can not only compromise sensitive client information, but it might compromise the company's banking information. It might compromise the company's proprietary data or trade secrets. So all of that needs to be taken in consideration with devices inside and outside the workplace. And a well thought out strategy regarding device security at all levels needs to be considered.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.